What if you could go back in time and you knew more before you made those big decisions in life? What would you do differently? What advice would have helped you then and now? Welcome to Know Before You Owe podcast. I am Jim Black, and I have been lucky to have gone from being a market maker on Wall Street, helping big decisions be made with key executives at companies, to now being a trusted advisor for large financial real estate transactions for families. In my career, I've met some of the most incredible people along the way, and we're lucky to have them share their experiences with us on this podcast. These are top experts in their fields, great leaders in work and in life. Yes, will share their life experiences, wisdom, and insights that you can leverage in your own decision of life. Thank you, and please stay tuned for our upcoming episodes, and I'm excited to help you know more before you owe. Please subscribe to learn more, and we look forward to seeing you on our next podcast. Hi, it's Jim Black with another edition of Know Before You Owe. I'm excited to have Jim Lee on my podcast today. Jim is the principal and managing director of Forma Investing. Thanks for being on our podcast today, Jim.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Awesome. Glad you're here. So you are a principal and managing director of a real estate syndication firm. And how did you get started? What was it that drove you to get into real estate and look into investing and all the things that go along with the exciting world of multifamily and commercial?
I was an immigrant from Taiwan. I came to the United States at the age of 11. And from there, I studied here, went to UCLA, graduated with an economics degree back in 2010. Most of you guys know that back in 2008, there's a subprime mortgage crash and there's the 2010 European debt crisis. So it was really tough for me to find a job out of college. So I went through many interviews, eventually got really good at selling myself. Found my first job out of college was working at LoopNet. And for those that don't know, LoopNet is just Zillow for commercial real estate. There, I basically learned everything there is I need to know about real estate. I spoke to, real estate investor, lenders, property managers, agents on a daily basis to sell them subscriptions, and also learned the importance of having multiple stream of income.
That's cool. So there's a lot of things I'd like to take out of that part to really dive deeper on what you're about. And also at the very end of our podcast, we always ask someone a very important question about what they would have done differently or had perspective on. In your example, you have several different things. One being first generation immigrant, right? You came here when you were 11 years old, you said. How did your family decide to move to America? What was it that drove them here? How did that process come to?
Well, my dad's brother, my uncle, they moved to United States, to achieve the American dream just like everyone else. And my dad saw that, and he wants to bring us over to give us that opportunity. So they applied for it through my uncle, and was admitted 6-7 years later, I think. And then
Wow,
so
that
we
took
moved
that
to.
long. That long of a process? Oh my gosh. And how did you guys afford to move? Was your dad doing a job that allowed you to move? Did he pick up and start a new career here? How did that happen?
So we were fortunate enough that he has always been an entrepreneur. So what he did was international business, import export. Faucets, sinks, things like in the bathroom, things that you find in the bathroom. So he's more mobile. Like he can basically relocate and still be okay with his business.
Cool, that's awesome. And when you got here, how did you pick? Did you guys move to California or did you move somewhere else first? Where did you guys move from or to?
Yeah, so when we came from Taiwan, we moved to California, in the city of Palmdale. Most people don't know where Palmdale is, but it's basically 40 minutes away, or an hour away up north from Los Angeles. And the reason why they moved us there is because they didn't want me to get comfortable with using Chinese, because there's a lot of Chinese people in LA. So we basically moved out there and was able to, um, practice my English and really get good at it. Hated them when I was a kid. Now I thank them for it.
That's cool. So they not only shifted you to a new country and culture, but forced you to use a different, a harder thing to learn. And that's really awesome. So sometimes doing the hard thing in life can actually help you excel in maybe other areas, right? Maybe your job that you got to have was made you better in that job because you were pushed at an early age. That's awesome. And then you studied economics, you mentioned at UCLA. Tell me about that? Did you choose economics because you thought you were going to get into real estate? What was the reasoning for economics?
Truthfully, I went to school just to please my parents. Being born and raised in an Asian family, um, we there's really not much choice. The parents are always gonna tell you to just be a doctor or a lawyer because they get paid the most, and because you won't be discriminated against by the world. And that's something that my parents has always told me since I was young. And so that's you basically just have to do sometimes just do the things that they want you to do, but just do it at a certain point where you're like, okay, I need to also make choices for my own life and live my own life. So there's that fine balance of it.
Gotcha. That's really interesting. So that's cool that you guys all made that shift and came here. And like you said, you worked at LoopNet and CoStar, and you mentioned it's kind of like in the real estate world, it's like the Zillow or the Redfin of commercial or multifamily or things that are non-owner occupied transactions. So you were probably able to see a ton of different types of investors, strategies, scenarios, properties. I'm sure it was never a dull moment for you where you got to learn and study and be a quick study because of all the opportunities you got to be put in front of. Is that what drove you to get to the next level in your career?
Yeah, so I think my dad set a great example as an entrepreneur. And you can see him go through like these sleepless nights all the time, always concerned about how is he going to earn his next paycheck. I think that's something that also have experienced ever since I became a realtor and decided to make a career out of it. You know, entrepreneur is not something, I wouldn't say it's something for everybody, but if you persist, if you continue to grow and learn from all your mistakes, it's all worthwhile, right? And initially that's the freedom that we're looking to trade for, by just sacrificing all the time and putting all the work and effort into building the business. So I think, you know, with my dad setting that example, and also I think deep down, I see how much my parents have sacrificed to give us this opportunity to come here. So I always wanted to give back however I can. And the first thing is, if I, you know, once I make like the big chunk of money, the first thing is definitely, buying them a house, taking care of them, and so forth, is to really give everything back to them, in a way. So that I think that's my biggest motivation as well, to always want to continue to push higher, and not stop and not stay stagnant.
It's good to have that drive. We've had athletes on our podcast previously, and one of the things that didn't get captured on one of the recordings was basically sports are like life. Muscles either get stronger or they get weaker. You don't stay the same, right? It's you either get better or you get worse. You never stay the same because everyone else is either improving or getting worse. And so that's the mindset that's so important to have in life is continue to move forward, continue to push forward and be your self motivation to get through some hard times and have a vision of what you want your success to look like also. So let's fast forward 10 years from now. What do you see yourself looking like 10 years from now? What are you going to be owning skyscrapers or what are your thoughts about your career path?
Yeah, so I got into syndication recently. It was right after lockdown. As a realtor, I couldn't host any open house or find leads, so I just started studying syndication, listening podcasts, educating myself through YouTube, and then eventually, once we opened up, went out. I paid for mastermind groups, went out to network, and eventually syndicated my first and second deal. So, if you're looking at timeline wise, 10 years down the road, I would definitely like to exit some multifamily deals, some other commercial real estate deals that I end up syndicating. But most of all, I think I want to be financially free. I don't want to have to think about how to earn where is my next paycheck going to come from, and not to have to go through what my dad goes through. The
Yeah, it makes
building.
sense. That's a good lesson to have, right? You see the stressful nights. You said sleepless nights. I can appreciate that. My father was had his own law practice too, and was not uncommon for Saturdays for him to be on the dictator, which is the old recorders, and dictating his depositions. So I remember hearing those a lot on Saturdays. But always found a way to make time to coach us in sports and be involved and be available. And I know that's a delicate balance, right? I'm sure you wish your parents to have more freedom from the stress of that, and along with yourself to be able to have the choice to decide to work 50 hours a week or work 5 hours a week. Having choices is so much better than having to do something just to make ends meet, right? So cool. So we looked forward a little bit about your goals. Let's look in the rears and say, because the point of the show is to teach our listeners or other people in similar situations how to make better decisions. So if you look back, maybe when you came to this country, or maybe when you went to college, or the challenges of coming into a new culture or a new community, can you give our audience a couple perspectives that you wish you would have done differently, or that you would want to give other immigrants that are coming here to be successful entrepreneurs? What would you recommend, or thoughts you have around that?
Yeah, sure. I have some golden nuggets from my own personal journey. So I think the most important part for me is to change my attitude about trying new things. um, I used to be very close-minded, and when I come here, because language barrier issue, being an introvert, being bullied and so forth. But as I get older, I learned that it's always better to look at the other side of the coin, right? To not always be so close-minded. To me, I think there's three sides to the coin, right? There's the heads, tails, and the edge. So if you can stay on the edge, I believe that you'll be able to learn the most.
Interesting. I've never heard that expression before. So heads, tail, or edge. I like that.
Right. And I can give you guys a good example
Yeah,
of
please do. Please do.
yeah. So since I was born and raised in Taiwan with a saver's mentality, in Asian culture, we've been taught if you can't pay for something in cash, you can't afford it. So in our mind, debt is slavery and cash is freedom, right? This philosophy runs counter to the heavy debt consumerism culture in America. So for me, it was a learning process because that's how I was raised by my parents. And but then, like, once I acquired my first two-bedroom, one-bathroom condo, I learned that debt is the ultimate tool used to amplify our return on investment. And but for some reason, it took a lot of courage for someone like me to take any sort of action to want to borrow when I can be living comfortably debt free. And that's how I was raised. So I started to educate myself, read books, and the very first book I picked up was, like everyone else, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. And in that book, he talks so much about borrowing. How why would you not borrow? All that stuff. So that was a mindset shift that I had to overcome um, by seeing the other side of the coin, right? Because I've only seen from the saver side, but now I'm seeing from the debt side and how I can leverage that. And now I'm staying on the edge. I can save and I can use debt to my advantage.
I really like that perspective. And again, a lot of people aren't comfortable taking on large risks or the unknown, right? People don't get super comfortable about wanting to jump into some being a landlord if they've never been a landlord, or
buy some big equipment for their business that they're running, whatever it might be. The unknown is the risk. The unknown is also where the opportunity lies. And like you said, if you look at it from both sides, from the edge, you'll have a better idea as to evaluating opportunity versus risk, or reward versus risk, or opportunity versus threat, or unknown. And in today's world, a lot of the success comes from people taking risks, educated risks, not some of these bank bailouts recently, and we're in March 2023. Some of those could have been avoided by better financial decisions by leadership, but having experience and knowing that you have one side figured out, like you mentioned, the saver cash mindset, and now you're pushing yourself to leverage, to use equity, to use debt to your advantage, and that's important. And sometimes having debt, sometimes leveraging yourself is not a good idea, and sometimes it is. And you just have to take those educated decisions and have a support team around you that can help you evaluate what the best um, solutions are to your challenge or your scenario. And that's why I do this podcast, because I want people to have better understandings about perspectives to have before they make big decisions. Like, you're a great example of that, right? You came here from another country, you had to learn a culture, you had to learn a new language, you studied economics, and went from there. And that's an amazing feat for a lot of people that don't take that step. They don't take that leap of faith to do that. And you had great mentorship with your dad in that regard, which is fantastic to see. So I'm really excited for you. I'm excited to see what your next steps are in your career. And what we will gladly do in this podcast is make sure we add your information so people can learn more about your company, what you're doing. And it's Forma Investing, and you guys are based in Southern California. And I'm looking forward to learning more about how to invest in real estate and looking at the edge of the coin. That's a really cool thing that I'm taking away from this, that having both sides, evaluating that perspective, staying focused on your goals, and knowing that you can achieve those goals if you invest in yourself. And anything that you'd like to end with, like anything that sticks out to you or stands out to you that you're also looking forward to in the future?
Yeah. I think the most important part is, um, the the business I built from ground up, and I think the Formosa, right? You mentioned for me, my mission is to educate and bring value in the form of syndication. I believe it's the safest and fastest track to reach the reality of financial freedom. My vision is to make sure that everyone who is involved with Formosa investing will improve their financial life tenfold, so they can focus on reaching their dreams and not their next paycheck. So that's something that I want to just to share with my audience about what more about myself. And if they'd like to learn more, just visit my website, formosainvesting.com. I also wrote a short 20-page long ebook about all the mistakes I made as a real estate investor, and how by overcoming these obstacles, created a path for me to become a syndicator. So that's
Cool.
also
We'll definitely share that. I'm excited to read that myself. But we'll share that in the comments area of our podcast. And we are on Spotify, Anchor FM. We're on YouTube. We're on Apple. So we have our own page. So we'll definitely share your content, and excited to read your case study on yourself. And what does Formosa stand for? I'm curious about that.
Yeah. So back in 1500, before Taiwan was even named Taiwan, the Portuguese discovered the island, and then they named it Formosa, which means the beautiful island. And ever since, Taiwanese took that as something we're proud of. And so whenever a Taiwanese investor sees my logo, they automatically knows I'm Taiwanese. So that's the brand. That's my niche.
That's cool. Awesome. Well, that's another edition of Know Before You Owe. And I want to thank Jim Lee again as our guest today. And again, from from having a closed mind to an open mind, like you mentioned, as your lesson there for people to learn about. You took risks. You had the entrepreneurial spirit to do that. You had good mechanics to learn by doing, right? You were in your first job really learning about investing in real estate. You got your real estate license. You started the company. You're now the managing director of that company. It's exciting to see your growth pattern. And I want to thank you and our audience for watching and listening to our podcast today. I'm your host, Jim Black, and stay tuned for our next episode coming to you soon. Thanks again for your time, Jim. And until next time, have a great day, guys. Take care.